At 95 years old, Clint Eastwood, the man who defined Hollywood toughness for over 7 decades, let slip a confession that shook even those who thought they knew him best. She was the only one who could do that to me. Not a line from a movie, not dialogue from a Western, but a raw, unfiltered truth from the most stoic figure in American cinema. Who was he talking about? Not a director, not a co-star, not even his fans, but a woman. A woman whose presence in his life had left a scar so deep that even after decades of fame, fortune, and reinvention, he still carried her memory. That woman was Sandra Locke. But to understand why Clint Eastwood, the ultimate lone wolf of Hollywood, would utter such words, we need to rewind to the Great Depression, to the boy who would grow into the legend. Clinton Eastwood Jr. was born on May 31st, 1930, in San Francisco, California. It was the height of the Great Depression, and like so many American families, the Eastwoods knew hardship. His father, Clinton Sr., worked as a steel worker and sometimes a migrant laborer, which meant constant moves, up and down the California coast, chasing work wherever it appeared. Clint grew up tall, gangly, often the new kid in school. But he also grew up learning resilience, humility, independence, the kind of grit that you don't learn from books, but from life pushing you down and forcing you to stand back up. Friends from his youth remembered him as quiet, reserved, a boy who didn't speak much but who carried himself like he was always observing, always calculating, a trait that would one day become the foundation of his screen persona. After high school, Eastwood had no immediate path to stardom. No fancy drama schools, no Hollywood connections. Instead, he worked odd jobs: lifeguard, lumberjack, steel furnace stoker. Jobs that built his body into a lean, 6'4" frame that would soon catch Hollywood's eye. But before that came the military. Drafted into the U.S. Army during the Korean War, Eastwood was stationed not in combat, but as a swimming instructor at Fort Ord. And here came the first of many brushes with death. One day in 1951, while hitching a ride on a Navy plane, the aircraft crashed into the Pacific Ocean. Eastwood, just 21 years old, found himself swimming several miles through frigid waters to shore. Years later, when asked about the ordeal, he shrugged it off with his trademark nonchalance. "I suppose if I had drowned, I wouldn't be here talking about it." That survival story would become symbolic of Clint Eastwood's life. Near disaster, followed by quiet resilience. Hollywood wasn't looking for Clint Eastwood, but when he arrived in Los Angeles after the Army, his striking looks and towering frame got him noticed. He took acting lessons, struggled through bit parts, and in 1959 got the break of a lifetime. He was cast as Rowdy Yates in the TV Western Rawhide. The show ran for 8 seasons and made Eastwood a household name. But Clint wasn't satisfied. He found the scripts repetitive, the characters shallow. He wanted more. He wanted films. And films came, though not in America. In the mid-1960s, a little-known Italian director named Sergio Leone was reinventing the Western genre. Grittier, bloodier, more morally ambiguous, and he needed a new face. Eastwood signed on for a modest fee, flew to Spain, and filmed a low-budget Western called A Fistful of Dollars, 1964. Nobody expected much, but when it hit theaters, audiences were captivated by Eastwood's man with no name. Stoic, mysterious, deadly with a gun. 2 sequels followed. For a Few Dollars More, 1965, and The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, 1966. Together, these films transformed Eastwood into an international star. But this wasn't just stardom, it was reinvention. Hollywood Westerns had grown stale, filled with clean-shaven, morally perfect cowboys. Eastwood, with his stubble, silence, and moral ambiguity, made the cowboy dangerous again, and America loved it. By the 1970s, Eastwood was more than a star. He was a cultural symbol. Nowhere was this clearer than with Dirty Harry, 1971. Harry Callahan wasn't a typical cop. He was brutal, cynical, and willing to cross the line for justice. The film struck a nerve in a country grappling with rising crime and disillusionment with authority. The line became legendary. "Do you feel lucky, punk?" Sequels followed. Clint was now Hollywood's ultimate tough guy, but there was more to him than guns and squints. In 1971, he directed his first film, Play Misty for Me. It was a psychological thriller, far removed from westerns or cop dramas. It showed Hollywood that Clint Eastwood wasn't just an actor. He was a storyteller. Over the decades, that storyteller would win 4 Academy Awards, including Best Director and Best Picture for Unforgiven, 1992, and $1 Million Baby, 2004. But as his career soared, his personal life grew more complicated. Clint Eastwood wasn't just famous for his films. He was famous for his women. His first marriage was to Maggie Johnson in 1953. They had 2 children together. But behind the scenes, Clint was restless. He had affairs, lots of them, with actresses, models, even a stunt woman named Roxanne Tunis, with whom he fathered a daughter, Kimber, in 1964. Through the 1970s and 1980s, Clint's reputation as a Hollywood ladies' man grew. He dated starlets, journalists, singers, even had rumored liaisons with European icons like Catherine Deneuve. He was charming, elusive, almost impossible to pin down, until Sandra Locke. This is where the story turns, and where Clint's later confession takes root. 1975, on the set of The Outlaw Josie Wales, Clint Eastwood met Sandra Locke. Sandra wasn't like the others. She was ambitious, fierce, a talented actress who had earned an Oscar nomination for The Heart is a Lonely Hunter, 1968. She wasn't content to be a pretty face. She wanted to be seen, to be heard, to create. Clint was drawn to her immediately. Their chemistry was electric, on and off screen. Soon, Sandra moved into his Carmel home, and for the next 14 years she would be the woman at his side. Together, they made 6 films: The Outlaw Josie Wales, The Gauntlet, Bronco Billy, Sudden Impact, and more. She was his co-star, his muse, his equal. But with passion came turbulence. Sandra Locke wasn't intimidated by Clint Eastwood. She challenged him. She argued with him. She called him out. And for a man used to control, in his career, in his relationships, this was both intoxicating and dangerous. Behind the glamour, there were storms. Clint's infidelity didn't stop. Sandra, meanwhile, believed they were building a life together. When she discovered Clint had fathered children with other women during their relationship, the betrayal was devastating. In 1989, the relationship imploded. Sandra sued Clint in one of Hollywood's most explosive legal battles. She accused him of professional sabotage, of deceit, of systematically destroying her career after their breakup. The case dragged on for years. Tabloids feasted on it. Clint, the tough guy who never cracked, suddenly looked vulnerable. And Sandra, she left with a scar that never healed. But here's the twist. Despite the lawsuits, despite the bitterness, despite the betrayal, Clint Eastwood, decades later, still whispered her name, still admitted that she was the only one who could truly break him, the only one who left him unable to move forward the same way again. Fast forward to the present. Clint Eastwood is 95 years old. He has lived through wars, decades of Hollywood, dozens of films, political roles, children, marriages, and heartbreaks. Yet when asked about love, about pain, he doesn't mention the awards, or his wives, or his long list of romances. He mentions Sandra Locke. She was the only one who could do that to me. Not Catherine Deneuve, not Maggie Johnson, not Dina Ruiz, his second wife. Only Sandra. Because she didn't just date Clint Eastwood, she challenged him. She dismantled the myth. She forced him to feel vulnerability, and that, more than bullets, more than critics, was what left a mark that never healed. Clint Eastwood is a Hollywood legend. 70-plus years in film. Actor, director, icon, Oscars, Golden Globes, AFI Lifetime Achievement. But when the history books write about him, the story won't just be about Dirty Harry or Unforgiven. It will also be about the man who, beneath the squint, beneath the .44 Magnum, beneath the tough exterior, was still human. And like all of us, he carried a wound named Sandra Locke. So, what do you think? Was Sandra Locke Clint Eastwood's greatest love, or his greatest regret? Let us know in the comments below. That was today's story under the silent spotlight. If you enjoyed uncovering Hollywood's forgotten past, leave a like and subscribe for more vintage tragedies, mysteries, and untold legends. Until next time, keep the reel turning.